guys, this is Ambasa here from Alok Institute. Today I will give you an introduction about PostgreSQL high availability, in other words replication, the setup how I have completed by using these following components. The component number 1, PostgreSQL cluster, other word the instance. In this set we do have one primary and you can configure 2 or more replicas, but in my case I have completed with the 2 replicas. I am using the second component like a patroni, which is basically for doing the management of your failover, switchover, reinitialize, restart, reload of your PostgreSQL cluster or other words instance. etcd we are used to make sure that to maintain the information about configuration, health and the current status of your PostgreSQL instance. And finally I have used HAProxy, which is basically to redirect my connections for read write purpose on the primary and read only for my replica. So sometime we need to call it as a primary is other word, we call it as sometime primary and sometime called leader or sometime we call it master. So like that there are different naming convention is given. So just keep a note. Now here what I have just given some example over here is totally I have referred 4 machines, machine 1, machine 2, machine 3 and followed by machine 4. In the machine 1 I will be considering initially I have a leader here, that is other word it's my primary, and the machine 2 I will call it as here is my replica or other words called standby 1 you can take, and the third machine which is I will be taking as a replica 2, and the last one I will use it as my HAProxy. Let's show you some example for the same. You can take here, this is the diagram. What I said here is you can say in this example the diagram trying to interpret. This is my HAProxy. You can have a HAProxy, and this is in my case I have a 4th machine I am using this HAProxy. The application will use this is my considered as an application and they are trying to connect connecting to my HAProxy. From the application you are connecting to HAProxy. The HAProxy will go ahead and understand, okay, are you looking for read write purpose or you want to go for read only purpose. That's what you have to go ahead and ask it. So I just mentioned here how to request for read only and how you can request for read write. You can try, this is the syntax which you can refer it. In my example I am using this is my port for read write purpose, this is for read write connection, and this is the port I have used for read only connections. So this is my IP which I am using for my HAProxy. Now remember just an example, I have a machine 1 which is 11 IP and entire IP you can say 192.168.56 at the end 11, and here I used 12 and here I used 13 and here I used 14. So overall I am using 4 machines, each has their own respective IP, but the client is trying to connect to my, this is a PSQL is one of the client acts like a client as a command line interface which will be using to connect to my one of the database which is created in my PostgreSQL instance, and by my username inside that instance would be the Ambassa, and once it is trying to connect based on the port what you referred in my HAProxy, it will respect to primary and it will go ahead and establish my connections. Let's take the setup here. You can just take this as an example. This is my setup. What I said here, I am using a utility name called patroni. What I just mentioned in the theory as well, you can go ahead and refer this. Patroni is used for, that is patroni other word, this is a utility. Patroni CTL tool is in order to perform my failover, switchover, so on and so forth. So we will see right away this switchover part, but let's understand what we actually trying to cover here. This is my utility. What is the utility name? Patroni CTL. So using this patroni CTL, I am just trying to say here, I am managing this my entire cluster. Other word, a set of instances. In this set of instances, you need to tell, okay, this is my leader. What it says, this is my leader. Okay, so this is a leader says, this is my leader. Other word, it is called primary. Whereas the replica, this is other word they are called as a standby. you need to remember, this is what I need to refer. One is we call primary, and this is sometimes called leader. Just try to remember, this is a primary or leader. Some cases where we call it as it is for read-write connection purpose. Okay, so point to note, whereas the opposite is called replica, and there it is we call it as for read-only purpose. That's it. This is what you should know in this example. Now the steps what we have to remember here is utility name called patroni. C stands for it's a configuration file, and in that configuration file I have did all the setups. And the list will give me a list of the instances or members are present in this particular cluster. Now as per the theory part, you can see here in this example, as I said, just a note of it, that I have a patroni in all places. I have one instance which is called primary. There are another two instances called standby, but you call it as standby, or other word is called replica. The PostgreSQL cluster, other word, it is a set of what it says primary followed by the point to note here, it is followed by your, this is the primary. Let me explain it one more time. This is my primary, this is my standby. Sometimes we call standby as my replica. So what we actually looking for in this entire setup, my every instance we call it as a PostgreSQL instance. On behalf of PostgreSQL instance, there is something called patroni, will update the heartbeat into my one of the component called etcd. So etcd says that it is storing my distributed configuration store or storage, which will contain the cluster information such as are they healthy, are their current status is okay. That all we will be maintaining in the area called etcd, and that is what we call the purpose of etcd. Now here you can configure single etcd, you can configure multiple etcd as well. So that's what I am just trying to refer here. So you can go for, in this case you can say that case 1 you can have one etcd, or you can have multiple 2 etcd, or you can have more than 2 etcd or more than one etcd. So in this example I just configured, in my example I configured this setup. Okay, so this is what I just had a setup. Now I will be showing you how you can go ahead and refer the final component would be HAProxy. So this is my HAProxy, you can see. Here you go. The same output what it is given here. Example you can take the one which says that right now who is a leader? Leader is 11. That's what I said here. This is leader, and replicas are 12 and 13. The same way the information will be keep collected by the HAProxy. You can see the HAProxy also says that in this case here, who is my current primary? Yeah, this is the primary, other word it is a node 1, it is again leader, whereas the standby, other words they are called node 2 and node 3. So the cluster, the HAProxy knows that who is the current primary and who is my current standbys. That's what HAProxy very much aware of it. It's a reference. Let's now try to go to test my failover part. Let's take an example, a switch over, you can just call it as. Now here what I will be doing it, I will be trying to first connect, test it. This is my 4th machine. I will be trying to use it just for my connectivity purpose. Here's the one I am using right now. 5001 is my read only purpose. Let's take an example. I connected, just double check where you are connected. So you can see that I am connected to the reference says that my IP which I used is 14, but I connected to 13. In the background it says that you are connected to one of your replica. Same way you can just disconnect from here, retry again one more time, double check once again. So you are now, it is saying that you are connected earlier 13, now you are going for 12. Let's I keep test it once again with once again and again. So one time you are going for 13, again 12, again 13. Let's go ahead and check here how it goes for one more time, the last time which I will be just showing you for your reference. So again you are going for 12. That means you are back end read only, we have multiple replicas. the connection going to the HAProxy. That's what IP address of the HAProxy in my example. It is going to redirect the connections to my one of the standby. So from the diagram you can just refer it here. Your application will connect to my HAProxy, and the HAProxy, whenever the client what he used maybe in our example 5001 as a port number of this particular HAProxy, and its IP is 192.168 and 56.14. So you are using this IP and this port which is through the application to your HAProxy. HAProxy is connecting to one of my standby because you have used a read only port purpose. Okay, so what I mentioned, you are connecting from the applications, you are going to connect to HAProxy, and the HAProxy will redirect the connections to this one of the standby. This is what this arrow mark says. So one time you are going for here and the another time you are going for here. So that's what it's a HAProxy the purpose. Load balance also does it. Plus it will also aware that which is my current primary and what are my current standby. Consider right now the primary is this, and we will try to connect to now with the primary from the application. Let's do it now. Here go. Let's disconnect from this connectivity. Let's now try to go for read write purpose another port number. Now I am connecting with the 5000. You can go ahead and check who is my current primary. Current primary is 11. So due to that, you go ahead and check here. Here I can see that this is my leader, hence the connection is going to here. You can just take here. Who's my leader? This is 11. So go ahead and check here. It is connected to current leader. See, this is a current leader. Now what I said, this is a 11 which I tried with connecting, and see this IP I'm using here with a 14 IP. I'm using with 14 IP which is a proxy server IP, but connecting with this port number 5000, but it goes to where? In the current leader. So the proxy knows that it is going to a current primary. So what happens? Let's say here it is perfectly connecting with this current 11. Now we will try to just exit from here. We will try to go to here and we will say that do some switchover. So here I will try to do patroni and configuration file name followed by switchover. You write this particular command. He will ask you, okay. The first the prompt it will say that currently he knows very well that running leader is right now on. The member host name is ambassador node 1. It is already given to me. Is this correct? Yes, enter. And now whom to make it next primary. So the candidate we have is node 2 and node 3. So you can take one of them. I will be taking now node 2 here. I wanted this node 2 want to become next primary or next leader. If you click here, enter with the host name. At last, when you wanted to perform this task, switch over. So let's say immediately, that is called now. And it says that do you want to really go ahead and do it for this leader? You want to go for demoting. So demoting is another word. You are trying to convert this leader as a primary to standby or called replica. So we are okay with that. Yes. So once you give this command with yes, so now he becomes a new leader. So who becomes a new leader? You can go ahead and check. So you mentioned that earlier it was the node 1, that is ambassador node 1 is my primary, and you selected for node 2, and here now this becomes a next leader. But you can see here right now, if I try one more time switch over, it says that currently leader is this, he is currently identified, and you wanted to continue, but I'll say here I don't want it. I'll say abort it. I did a control C. I just tried to check list says that now node 2 is my, that is we call ambassador node 2 is my leader whose IP is 12. Let's ask now this connectivity. Go ahead and check here. Now if I try same connections one more time, earlier this 5000 was connecting to 11 because earlier he was a leader. Go ahead and connect. Go ahead and check here. It says that it is now connecting to 12, which is my current leader. So you know very well this connectivity is going to directly to current primary because the proxy knows who is my current primary. And go ahead and check in the page where earlier it was showing me that node 1 was my primary. Earlier it is the early stage. I have to go for here refresh. Before refresh, I would say that here I have a refresh button. this is a primary earlier and these are my two standbys, node 2 and node 3. If I refresh button here, now refreshed, then it says that node 2 is my primary. Now node 2 becomes a leader and node 1 and node 2 becomes a standby. Now let's try to go ahead and check. If I try with here disconnect, let's try to take 5001 as my port number to test where it is jumping. It says that first time it is connecting to 13, disconnect, again try to connect one more time. This time it should tell that it is connected to 11. Now you can see here, earlier it is connected to 13 because he is one of the replica, and now it is connected to 11. That is again one more replica. This is what you have to understand whenever you go ahead and completed your setup of PostgreSQL high availability, which is other word replication. That setup is already built here. So now the purpose of this is to make sure that if one of your leader, consider this was the leader, and now this is gets crashed. Okay, so if this is get crashed, what happens? The second one of the available replica becomes your primary. An example, let's go for here, go ahead and check who is my current primary leader. It's node 2. I'll go to node 2. I'll just try to say here sudo systemctl and stop patroni. If I do a stop patroni, that means you are crashing this particular instance. Now after you crashed it, now go ahead and check. Here earlier there were 3, now you can see that 2 supposed to be. Okay, so you can go ahead and see earlier it is total 3. Now waiting for this to update and give me you can say few seconds to update the information about here. What it says that it is earliest, this node 2 earlier it was the leader. Now who is becomes the leader? Node 3 becomes no leader. And go ahead and check here, there is cases where it takes few minutes to get this updated. Now you can see that node 2 is no more available here. Now node 2, it is showing that it is no more exist in this particular as a member. So what happens if I try to do start, or go ahead and check here, this is my refresh page. You can go ahead and check here, this is what earlier setup says that node 2 was the leader and node 1 and node 2 is my standby. If I do a refresh here, what happens? Now node 3 is my primary and node 1 is my standby. So node 2 is no more available in this setup. What is that the situation here is node 2 get crashed. If the node 2 get crashed, automatically one of the available replica becomes a primary, and that is what the beauty of your handling through this entire setup with patroni, etcd, and followed by the HAProxy knows that who is my primary and who is my current standby. The moment you start again with here, example we stopped earlier this 2, now go ahead and start it here. If I go ahead and start here patroni again, you have to wait for a few seconds. Let's go ahead and check. Earlier it was only 2, now wait for a few seconds and then see here the node 1, node 2 earlier it was crashed, no more exist, but now once after started it is again syncing again. After sync it becomes now ready to accept the connections. That means it is ready now, getting the all up to dates. Now it is getting a sync with your the new primary. So now who is my new primary is 13. In node 3 we call it as leader. Leader is now new primary. Consider you wanted to go back to node 3 to node 1 as a primary, you can do that. Again you have to perform the switchover part. That's what it is, very simple, but you have to understand the whole setup is during the configuration. There are a lot of things has to be configured at the beginning, but once you set up, it is very smooth. It is very fully automated, where you just have to understand if one of the gets failed, automatically the second becomes the available becomes the leader. So in our case we demonstrated that if the node, this very beginning I just said here, we have a very beginning as I earlier mentioned, node 1 was my leader. So what I did, I just performed one switchover. So during switchover it asked me that okay, whom you want to make a next leader. So I selected with node 2. In that case it is demoting the existing leader, called he is decreasing his power of primary called leadership, and that is we called demoting, and converting again primary as a standby, and the existing replica we call standby converting as a your new leader or primary. So after this is finished, so it this one takes a few seconds to resync, but it is now ready to work as a reader. And we tried one more time and I again cancelled here. That's okay. Now I can just check that who is my current leader. That says that node 2 is my leader. So at the later we just say that okay, go ahead and crash my second node. So this is my host name. You can just check here, node 2. Node 2 I did it stop. So the moment I get stopped here, it takes few minutes to after stopping, it takes a few minutes to take out this member from your cluster. See here, earlier it was 3. Now node 2 is stopped. Now hence node 2 is now out of the member in the given cluster. So cluster is a what? It's a group of one primary and multiple standby or replica. That's we call as a cluster. And this is a PostgreSQL cluster. Don't mix with your Oracle cluster. Oracle cluster is a different, where the Oracle cluster has a instance failure where you are not a kind of a database failure, but here it is a kind of a replications. Don't mix it. They both are having a different technology. So here entire the instance which has a group of databases. Now here the cluster is the what where we have one primary and multiple replicas. That's what it is has been set up, completed. Now here we demonstrated okay, if something get crashed, it will take out from the list, and if again you restarted, an example, if you give the start options and then again it gets rejoined. So it is again very straightforward. We call it as if you are a Oracle DBA, we call it as reinstate. So now automatically rejoining, or in PostgreSQL manually if you want to configure this, you have to call it as node rejoin. So once we call it as this entire the setup what we completed. If the primary crashed, the purpose of this whole setup for high availability, meaning if the primary crashed, you want to make it next available replica to be automatically become a primary, or the leader crashed, the available replica has to be automatically become a new leader. And once that old crashed leader it restarted, it has to rejoin as a replica. So no need to implement the DBA, and that's what the high availability says. Now the diagram you can just recap. Here you go. This is what we had gone through it. This is my entire, we call it as a cluster, where one primary, multiple standby, and this is my etcd who will store this health of this entire clusters, and this is my HAProxy. So application can directly connect to primary or directly connect to standby. The problem here cases where if the some cases where what happens, so the primary, in case once it is connected to directly to one primary and that is crashed, again I need to change my IP address. That changing my IP address again and again in my application is not the realistic. What we supposed to say, so you will have one dedicated IP or the hosting where the HAProxy, the application will connect to HAProxy. The HAProxy will know that okay, currently this is my primary without knowing the application. So entire taken care by HAProxy. So we have a total component here is one is my etcd, or you can say one is my cluster. This is what we call PostgreSQL cluster, which has one primary, multiple standby, and we have this in each places we have a patroni, which is again the purpose is to manage your failover management, or you can go for switchover, you can go for reload, reinitialize, all those stuff. That's the purpose of patroni. And etcd will help maintain the status of your health of each your instance, and whereas HAProxy is redirect your connections based on read write required or read only required to the respective instance. That's it. This is what I have completed my entire setup to give a demonstration about how you can go ahead and complete a high availability, we call it as here PostgreSQL high availability setup. This is what I have just now. Hope I have covered all the components which are used in this particular demonstrations. So make sure that you can also go through this all points what has been just now demonstrated. So what I completed as of now is given you the over entire the PostgreSQL high-availability replication setup what has been completed, and also demonstrated how exactly it works. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye bye.